Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the AWISE Innovation Summit. Today's topic is an introduction to 5G technology. What an interesting topic, because I think it will continue, like many technologies, to expand the way we think about things connecting and interacting. Before we do jump into that, I want to share briefly with those that are attending for the first time what is AWISE, or the Albury-Wodonga Innovation Summit and Expo, with COVID stripping the expo for the year. The Innovation Summit was, if I change my view, apologies there, that's terrible. There we go. The Innovation Summit was created to help share ideas, thoughts and knowledge around how technology is changing the way we are interacting, working and living. I won't read every note on the slide. One of the key things with innovation is that necessity is the mother of all invention, all creation, they say. And Australia has traditionally been seen as an innovative country, definitely punching above our weight in terms of the things we create for the populace we have. However, today on the global stage, innovation seems to be being dominated by Europe and Southeast Asia, with Australia progressively slipping in its ranking in the world. You'll see over the course of the years, every year or two, our rank is slipping by a position, as is New Zealand. So it's reflective of our region and probably the Western society. So key to me was to bring this together and to start sharing knowledge and ideas. It was particularly with a focus on regional Victoria and regional Australia initially, but with the trend and the shift to more online events, we're streaming this to you now live. So a couple of recent sessions we've had were connecting with your future customers, micro-learning in the modern workplace, emerging opportunities in IoT, and emerging uses of artificial intelligence. They're great, and we're planning to publish those live and online. Coming up today, we've got an introduction to 5G technology, which we'll get into very soon. But we also have the future of robots in the workplace, where Nicky Rizal will be joining us again next week to explore how robots are likely to be used in the coming future, cybersecurity for business, and adopting digital in your business, where a senior representative of the NBN will be coming to talk about how we can be using that better to drive our business. Right now, what I want to do is, before getting into an introduction to 5G for technology, I've got my co-host and moderator here, Victor from the Centre for Optimism. And Victor is going to talk to us about optimism and innovation. Victor, welcome.
Thank you very much, Guy. Look, I won't speak at great length because everyone here has heard me speak about that connection between optimism and innovation. The science says it's impossible to be a true innovator if you are a pessimist. You get ground down by failure. And David, who was on a few weeks ago, as we talked about, innovation requires experiment. It requires new ways of doing things. It requires acceptance that some things won't work and some things will. And I saw a wonderful quote this week from the philosophy department at the University of Melbourne, Guy, and I think this exemplifies the 5G innovation and optimism conversation. It was, trust is an optimistic belief that the person making the promise to you will carry it out. So trust is all about optimism, and the 5G conversation is very much about trust. And as we always do in these events, we always ask the key speakers what makes you optimistic. So Guy, you've had a lot of practice with this. I've asked you many times now. Share with the audience what makes you optimistic.
Victor, thank you. On any given day, I think we draw from something different to find our optimism. Today, I was really optimistic when I heard a quote from Eckhart Tolle. where he said the flower is just waiting for you to notice it. By be willing to receive, you are allowing others to express themselves. So I think the openness to new suggestion and new possibility is what makes me optimistic, Victor.
And as John Hagel, who headed up the Deloitte Centre for the Edge, said, Guy, you know, the passion of the explorer underpins optimism, always that delight in learning new things. And today, you know, David is such a whiz on 5G. He's going to take us from the basics to the space age of 5G. So, David, I have to ask you, what makes you optimistic?
What makes me optimistic is, I think, the fact that I am rather confident about the future. I do trust the future. And in particular, I think I'm a person that carries many hopes. So many hopes, and my strong belief is that for example, the technology will prevail, and practically the connectivity, and that's about my talk today, will never stop, regardless, and will keep advancing, and as practically any obstacle will not block the path.
Absolutely beautiful. Now, everyone who's listening in, and we've got some great friends here, highly intelligent and articulate. So number one button I want you all to remember is that reactions button on the bottom right, you know, which gives you a little heart or a little applause or the like. So I'd like you all to feel quite splendid in using that today as you agree or disagree or the like. And then we're not in church. So the chat button and that conversation there is absolutely fantastic. And what we'll do, David's going to do a bit of a presentation, and then it's open wild mic to the questions and the comments, because that's what this is all about, innovation and curiosity and the like. So David, the first question to you, given that people have been burning down 5G towers as they burnt witches in the Middle Ages, what is 5G?
What is 5G? So 5G is nothing else than the fifth generation of mobile communication systems. It is specified by the 3GPP organization and standardized by a number of standardization bodies, especially the ITU. And we designed this system, implemented, and I mean the industry, but also with a lot of contributions coming from the public sectors as well. So we designed the system to design, implement, and we have deployed this system to meet three fundamental usage scenarios requirements. And I'm thinking of enhancing the mobile broadband experience, providing us gigabit speed. The second requirement was about ultra reliable and low latency communication services. We are thinking of reliability of 5 nines and more, and latency at least end-to-end below 10 milliseconds. Wireless, two ways, 1 millisecond. And the last requirement that's now coming, I'll show you through the course of my presentation, is about massive machine type of communications. And here the requirement was of providing connectivity to more than 1 million elements within 1 square kilometer.
That is just amazing. So look, everyone, those who've just been joining in, as we said, we want lots of reactions using the reaction button, because I love that explanation. I want you all to chat in the chat function. And David, who's a professor at UNSW, as well as working at the cutting edge of 5G, has got a presentation for us. So he's going to take us through it. And then, as I said, it's wild mic with questions and comments. So David, do you want to take us through the presentation to let us touch the future of 5G, and for those of us who are in small business or big business, how we can make sense of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. And I have put together a few slides, but I hope I will illuminate and inspire all people here connected. Yeah, so let's, I take the, just allow me to take the pointer. Yeah, like Victor introduced me, I've been in the information and communication technology field for about 25 years. My experience is mostly within the industry, although I have always had an element of academic contribution because I love it. Has been especially at Nokia for around 15 years, and then Huawei around 10 years. And I'm recently also serving the Infomedia Development Authority in Singapore, chairing the 5G task force. My knowledge is especially on mobile communication system end-to-end, enriched by the cloud services, artificial intelligence, but also I've done a lot in the direction of the Internet of Things. Let's start now with the three fundamental trends which pretty much define what optimists, or I would say everybody, believes a better world is. Yeah, and the first one, by 2025, we are expecting that the 5G will bring a connectivity not only to smartphones, but it will also connect anything and everything. So you see on this slide, I've just captured a few use cases, and the key applications I think will be especially in the field of entertainment, healthcare, I think smart manufacturing, education, and the way in general how we communicate in terms of telepresence and valid for telecommuting, and that will be available also. Many platforms boost also by the fact of the coronavirus pandemic. So everything connected means in practice we will be able to live a full immersive experience with the utilization of augmented, virtual, and mixed reality. And I think what we will see also, it is a massive adoption of the digital twinning. So the digital twinning has many applications, like for example, Shenzhen as a city has been about completely digitalized. And what I think another important application will be in the field of healthcare. That means that our body in all aspects will be digitally represented on a digital platform that will provide access to a number of doctors, and many auctions and enforcement prescription can then take place in the place we live at home without the need of visiting the doctor or hospitals. The second trend, let me see here. What we are expecting here is that 5G will massively contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So it will help us become much more green than we are today. And here we have two key effects on this important achievement. So that the target is to have a 10 dB, so 10 times energy reduction overall in the planet with respect to 2015 by 2025. And that is achieved in practice by making the vertical sectors smart, intelligent. So that basically the 5G as the nervous system of the digital economy, digital society, and silver economy will increase dramatically the productivity and efficiency of product creation processes, or I say business processes in general, that will reduce the needed energy for performing those particular tasks. The other important, I'll show you the technology in a minute, is that the 5G has been also, the technology themselves have developed and has been now implemented in a way that they consume much less energy than earlier generation. Therefore, that massively contributes to the saving of the greenhouse gas emissions. The other important trend is on cybersecurity. This is really a big issue that it is of global concern. And what we're expecting here is to have a massive adoption of risk mitigation frameworks. In particular, what we target here, it is the formulation implementation of defense in-depth strategy with the support of the so-called zero trust model. So to me, trust means practically zero trust. A trustworthy element means the element supports all those mechanisms that would allow an authentication, authorization of the access to the element, therefore mitigating any kind of internal or external threats that practically will lead to an end-to-end resilient system. Resilient means that you can detect and immediately appropriately respond with the control mechanisms so that any risk, any threat from any kind of internal or external agent can be truly mitigated. Here you have an example how Huawei approaches the problem. And you may see from this slide, complex, but extremely simple. That's the system of today. That's 5G. That's what the 5G is all about. You may see from this slide here, it consists of radio access, the technology complemented by fixed access technology like the passive optical network access, 10 gigabit point. We are now talking about 50 gigabit point and beyond. Then we have an aggregation network, which is in a transport network layer, also interestingly realized by the implementation of microwave links. They may reach nicely 10 to 20 gigabit per second and 10 kilometers plus point-to-point communication. And then we have a central part of the system, which it is pretty much placed at the edge of the network. Edge means close to the radiating point, or would say in general the end user, that will host also the mobile multi-access edge computing proxy, which makes it possible to bring the application close to the end user so that the latency between these 2 points is reduced. That element, it is not a 5G element. It is specified by the ETSI and must connect to the 5G system through a user plane application function, of the core network. So this particular element interfaces to the core network that is distributed across the system. Then we have a backbone system, and then we have the core network. And you may see in its implementation, although the core network runs on cloud, is of cloud nature, service-based oriented architecture. It is completely separated from the access network that remains implementing the same type of architecture of earlier next generation. So what Huawei has done here is not only to achieve this goal, think of supporting all standards in terms of security functionality. And I want to point out that the 5G security functionality are far more advanced than the 4G. But in addition to this, we have many enhancements to security controls that may go from the equipment security down to control mechanisms across the different network domain. And Huawei is also providing a security management system, so an easy way for the telecom service provider, so the one owning the infrastructure, having the possibility of operating really end-to-end and deploy the corresponding security strategy. Another important trend and the demand for it is on security assurance. Many people talk about risk mitigations, but as of today, there are little mechanisms, standard approaches to mobile communication systems. So what we have in place now, ongoing, it is the NESAS industry initiative from the GSMA and 3GPP. It's a joint collaboration to achieve this unified and harmonized network element security assurance scheme that would allow us to achieve two important goals looking at the risk mitigation frameworks. The first one, it is the auditing, proper auditing of how those products are made, so the product creation processes and the product itself. And the other one, we will have the mechanisms in place to verify the security of network elements using 3GPP specifications. So that's basically the three fundamental trends and targets we are having in front of us, and we will achieve them by 2025. Now, the question is, yeah, but what is the system, how the system will evolve? And I've made up just a few more slides, but important slides, so we are all on the same page after this presentation. So that 5G has been coming in three distinct phases. So it was already completely specified and standardized 1 year and more back in the release 15. So the first release of the system, it is about meeting all the requirements for enhancing the mobile broadband experience. The next generation, so phase 2 release, 3GPP release 16 has been just completed, and that particular specification will enhance further the mobile broadband experience, but more importantly, will support all the expected fundamental requirements to achieve an ultra reliable low latency communication system. So the two versions of 5G, they are already meeting pretty much all the requirements set by the ITU, that's the standardization development organization, in the vision they published back in, I think, in 2015 or so. The system will keep evolving, and so we are now working into the specification of further enhancing the mobile broadband experience URLC, but especially we are now targeting into developing a technology that will meet the requirements for massive machine type of communication. I'm thinking in particular of consumer type of IoT, whereas all the industrial IoT related requirements already met with deployment and specification of release 16. And then what happened next? Yeah, next is 6G. It's already coming. You may see how the time axis has been dramatically compressed if you look back at the earlier generations. And as we speak, massive research on 6G is ongoing. I'm thinking of especially Europe, the European Commission framework, and other organizations like China. And what we are having here is that as the research is expected to complete in a couple of years from now, then the 6G study item would start, and then the specification or working item of the next generation of mobile communication system will come out, and the 6G we are expecting to be adopted commercially in approximately 10 years from now. So it's not far, but what is the technology about? What is it? I made a reviews, a comprehensive summary of what is this technology about? What is the difference of with the 5G with respect to 4G? The architecture remain the same. As I said, the radio access network edge will remain separated from the core network, as the two fundamental domains will be always remain separated from the transport network layer that connects those logical and physical elements. However, there are fundamental differences. One of the differences that we have to remember that the new radio coming with the 5G works across pretty much all spectra below 100 gigahertz, whereas the 4G is the deployment of 4G and LTE has been designed to work in the sub-3 gigahertz band. Now here you have important feature of the system, and on the left here you may see on a spider diagram what particular requirements the corresponding technology meets in terms of enhancing the mobile broadband experience, such pretty much the first release that will make us enjoying our mobile phones much more and through a virtual and augmented reality that we can do today with the 4G system. Then we will have the URLC enhancements. So the industrial IoT is a chapter of the release 16, and that's about enhancing further the reliability and reducing latency, therefore enabling vehicle-to-vehicle communications. So in general, I would say we can think of teleoperating the big machines. There could be trucks, there could be robotic platforms in general. And the other announcement that we are having coming with this release are on the positioning system that no longer use a GPS. This is very inaccurate. So we are thinking of 10 to 20 meter works outside here. It's a positioning of around 3 meters that could be also achieved indoor. It will work also on unlicensed spectrum, and yeah, it will support also a number of security enhancements, such as the IoT access, authentication, and authorization, and end-to-end network slicing security. And then the release 17, in particular, will further enhance the corresponding experiences. Maybe useful for this today is to mention the introduction of the non-terrestrial networks, with the usage of satellite systems. And here we are thinking of three types of satellites. So we have the geostationary Earth orbit, so the GEO, which are basically static satellites, but more importantly will be the utilization of satellite as an access technology at much lower altitude, and this is achieved with LEO systems, so low Earth orbiting satellites, and also, in this case, I mean, the range and the footprint of the satellite is reduced. We are still thinking of from 100 to 1,000 kilometers. That's particularly viable for rural area coverage, I think, and Australia may think of that one as a complementary solution to provide connectivity to rural. So that's basically, in short, what we have today, what is coming next year, and what's going to follow by 2025. That question I also received is, but what about the deployment of this technology? How it's going to work if I live in a urban area, suburban area, or in a rural area? What is it? What are we expecting if 5G was deployed? So deployment, as I said, the new radio will support all frequencies, pretty much below 100 gigahertz. And we may use different spectra to provide coverage, connectivity, say 5G services in different parts of the country. So today, the deployment is in C-band, which is this area here. So we cannot expect much coverage outside the main, outside the city itself. So I mean, in the C-band, we have a massive benefit in terms of enhancing the mobile broadband experience. So you may achieve on fixed wireless access and sustain around 100 megabit per second, but your topology, so the inter-site distance, it's rather small. We think of 100 to a kilometer. And in order to achieve larger coverage, we need to think of deploying this technology at much lower frequencies, that is the sub-3 gigahertz. In particular, Australia has already allocated 700 today used for the 4G services. We may think of reforming that maybe at a later time. And now they're discussing the 800 and the 850-900 megas, or maybe next year. So that would allow us to dramatically expand the coverage, because the longer the wave is, so the lower the frequency is, the larger and the easier is the propagation of the electromagnetic field. So here we may think of even intersite distance of 10 kilometers. And then the last deployment is coming specifically on target areas, and that's the usage with the use of millimeter wave. So here the spectrum will be much larger. We are thinking of 800 megahertz, or even 1 gigahertz spectrum. So by deploying those frequency locally, we can think of achieving gigabit speeds, but the intersite distance is extremely small, with no possibility of having from outdoor and indoor coverage, including it is impossible to penetrate windows and glasses. So 5G is there, and just to give you, because there are many people talk about 5G, but they have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. They've never seen the system, they've never put their hands on the system. So there's a lot of confusion of blurring things here, and that does not blur anything. It's very clear, the system, extremely simple. And here you have an example of system implementations. It depends on the frequency. So if the frequency is high enough, we may think of an active antenna that connects to a baseband unit. And here you have example of deployment scenario using massive MIMO into the various configuration. And the more the transmitter and receiver, of course, the better the coverage and the better is the speed, because of the pattern of the antenna. It is much more refined to a particular directions. And then, of course, we may think of expanding the coverage through the introduction of specific sites and solutions like that. Huawei is promoting the Rural Star, which is a base station that is powered with solar, so it can easily, say, be integrated, deployed, and bring the coverage where currently is apparently impossible. But the system, it is an off-grid element that connects using microwaves from using solar energy, and that could be a way to transmit. That's an example portfolio, so that the system is 5G is extremely simple. It consists mainly of 2 blocks. We have the baseband unit, that this unit here, this box here, will then be connected to the core network, represented in the slide. And then we have a site element radiating, which today can be realized only in one. So all the 2G, 3G, and 4G goes on the lower part of the antenna. And the upper part of the antenna, it is a massive MIMO system. And that's your 5G. And that this system is extremely simple. So it will be basically these 2 blocks all in one on the roof. And then it depends on whether you have space also for the baseband unit that could be integrated on one mast, or it could be separated. Yeah, that's pretty much what the 5G is. And then we have a lot of details in terms of technology, but the fundamental enabling technology is with the 5G new radio. It is the massive MIMO, so the possibility of forming beams and also aggregating now spectrum on a single carrier component of 400 megahertz. And that basically allow us to bring capacity and the coverage wherever we please. Now, what is 6G then? What is the difference between
David, so sorry to interrupt it. It's 10 past 11 now, so there's some questions from the audience and the like. So I wonder if you could wind up in the next couple of minutes so we can allow people to ask questions of you.
I just finished 2 slides. So the 6G is basically a new system that will operate especially in the terahertz. So we go up on spectrum. By going up on spectrum, what we have here is that the base station can receive a cluttered environment. It can sense completely and learn from the environment pretty much as our brain using our eyes does. And the services, new services to be exchanged will be especially in terms of visual augmented reality, tactile internet with an holographic rendering end-to-end and inferencing, because all the new developments will be driven by the support of artificial intelligence. In addition to this, the 6G will be by design from the very beginning integrated with the satellite access communication. In particular, we'll make use of the LEO satellite system, which can easily, you see here, with global full coverage, achieve speeds lower than fiber, if fiber was deployed. And that is my last slide. So to summarize, today we are having in front of us a 5G system that deals with any kind of information, and what we're having today is an information world. And we will achieve by 2025, with a proper deployment of the technology and technology selection, an intelligent and fully connected world. And then later, by 2030 and beyond, we will talk about an holographic world using 6G. And here we will have in front of us speeds 10 times faster than what the 5G can provide today. So we're talking about 100 gigabit per second, and latency end-to-end, say below 1 millisecond, because that's the latency we need to have in place for tactile internet and full holographic experience. So that's basically what I prepared for you today. There is a lot of information, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you this vision.
David, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for that. Do you want to shut down the slides so we can see everyone? And David Broadhurst, you had a number of brilliant questions, but do you reckon you could ask your third question first?
Just before we jump into that, Victor, may I just say, David Soldani, thank you very much. With more than half of my life in technology, I know how hard it is to give a brief explanation of something and distill 25 years worth of knowledge to something that will reach everyone. There's not many topics in technology where I walk away a little bit mind blown. You've definitely stretched my perspective of what 5G is. It's like when someone says, what's a vehicle? Explain it. And you're trying to explain trucks and bikes and cars and, wagons. And I see here from this that 5G is a much broader perspective. And what I saw was amazing there, David, is I will come back to a question after David's around health and things, but I saw within that spectrum was Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz that everyone uses every day. And I was having thoughts around fact versus fiction, the 40s with the gamma ray gun, and oh no, the man with the gamma ray gun is going to get you. And I think about things like X-rays. We all know how much benefit X-ray presents, but we also know that there are risks. When you go to the hospitals, there's the glass screens. Yet we'll jump on a plane, and I think it's 4 plane trips from Melbourne to Sydney or thereabouts is the equivalent to receiving an X-ray. So David, incredible presentation, a lot of information to take in. And as Victor gestured, David Broadhurst, welcome back. David was one of our presenters a few weeks ago on micro learning and how there's evolving opportunities with technologies like 5G to learn on the job. David, shoot with your question. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Victor. And thanks very much, David. You blew my mind, mate. The thing that always I find intimidating but also exciting is the acceleration of how things are moving. But because I'm a simple bloke coming from a trade background, my question that Victor's asked me to ask you first is, simply put, what are the key business benefits to the average small to medium business owner on this 5G, 6G, on this journey and this trajectory for a simple small to medium business owner? What benefits am I going to see for my business?
Yeah, I mean, there are many benefits now. It depends on the sector he or she is in, and so the most benefit will be into the manufacturing, for example, area, or transportation. And I explain you what transportations. Then we are thinking of healthcare, but also small and medium enterprises will benefit of 5G. And the reason is because all the small and medium enterprises, they have 2 fundamental trends by 2025. The first, they will all make use of cloud computing, cloud services. And the second, they will start using artificial intelligence. Now, if you also want to have an element of mobility, you need to have a system that will allow you to exchange services in terms of high-speed connectivity, low latency, and ultra-reliable communication between the 2 points. The 2 points are your device, which will tend to be unintelligent, not intelligent, and cheap, because all the intelligent capability and rendering functionality will move to the cloud. And the cloud will, as I showed you earlier, come very close to us because with the introduction of the multi-access computing, will connect directly very close to us or reduce the latency. So the benefits are a number that will allow us to work much more efficiently and also use our time to do something we are pleased about. Because if you think of this technology that will connect also the machines, we could make use of machine as a service to perform the task I don't want to do, so I can do something else. For instance, I'm not interested to drive. I'm just interested to carry my body from A to B. If that could be done as a service, possibly using a driverless car or a teleoperated car, it is fantastic. That will be a cheap, will create many more jobs, because if you think the technology, the services on top that could be created in terms of advertisements or anything you may think of will increase. So I see a number of benefits.
Can I just ask you, because I think the big concern for a lot of people is how technology is taken over jobs. You've just mentioned that this is going to create jobs. Can you explain to me how you see that working when most technology is designed to get rid of the labor component?
So the proof is very easy also to understand. So the only reason we are living today longer, enjoying our lives and have a job, is because of technology. Otherwise, you and I will be digging now here around on my garden to prepare the mushrooms and other stuff for eating. So that's key. And it is demonstrated by the book, an interesting book I suggest people read, The Second Machine Age, which is an introduction to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. With AI, the number of jobs will increase. It's of course intended that some of the tasks that can be repetitive tasks, boring tasks, or tasks that human do not deserve to do, you don't need our brain to do that, we go to machine. However, in order to achieve this goal, we need to have different skills, and therefore we need to learn how to use the technology, how to innovate, how to make this technology an integral part of our lives. And the number of jobs, if you consider the complete ecosystem, even around offering cloud gaming as a service, with respect to me go to the shop, buy a station and install the software, the number of jobs is really increased dramatically, because it is a complete new ecosystem that requires the development of software, introduction of hardware, new services, and all of this means new job in practice. But we need to develop the right skills to move into this direction, which includes the generation of new business model. If you don't have a business model, look at the IoT. The IoT, nobody uses them yet. They will become more powerful as long as the technology it is developed with a clear understanding of the new business models.
Awesome, thank you.
So David Broadhurst, if you have a micro credential on how to use 5G in small business, I'm going to be one of the first people to sign up. I reckon Jeff Pryor's going to be in too, aren't you, Jeff? Now, I think Guy wanted you, Nikki, you know, you're our computer lady. How are we going to use computers in Albury, Wodonga and the rural areas around, powered by David's 5G network? And then the 6G.
Victor, just to share for everyone, Nikki is the CEO of Exaptech, and she will be speaking next week on robots. She's an expert in robots and one of the 30 people globally to know, according to what I'm seeing online. David, again, that's fantastic. And we were just having David Broadhurst talk about jobs. Nikki, you must hear it all the time. Robots are going to take over not just my jobs, but perhaps even the world. What's your view on how these technologies are going to help us?
Hi, Guy. Hi, Victor. And hi, David. Soldani. Nice to see you again. Great presentation. Sorry, I was a little bit late for it. Guy, I think we're not as close as we think to the robots taking over everything. I work with the robots, particularly my field of robots, which is personal robots. I think we're a way of, you know, not having people in conjunction with them. there may be a day, and if you're talking about robots in hospitals doing dirty, boring, repetitive work, as David's mentioned, then certainly you want these robots doing it, these industrial robots collecting waste that you don't want people to do it with. But where you need people, I still think people is first and foremost, and you use technology to help people doing their jobs. That's my view on these robots. And I always try and explain to people my robots, particularly telepresence, it's not there, particularly in aged care. You don't want these robots there because you don't want people. It's because people can't be there in the first instance. Then you use the technology, keeping people connected, and that's what we flourish on. We need to be connected to each other.
How would we be if we didn't have technologies like Zoom during places like Melbourne in the lockdown that kept people connected? And as you say, Nikki, having this potential for technology to be sophisticated enough through networking like 5G to perform tasks at arm's length. I mean, let's look at surgeries that are now performed, little keyhole surgeries that are performed by robot arms that were impossible with the human hand in the past. Victor, surely you must yourself have a couple of questions that have emerged in your mind around all that spectrum that David covered, pardon the pun.
Oh, just for me, working in the optimism field, we're about to launch a micro course on the habits of the optimist. And, we're already accumulating, just in the test bed, hundreds of jokes. We ask people, what are the jokes that make you laugh? And in this modern age, I'm 61. So most of the jokes I grew up with were sexist, ethnic, you name it, that are inappropriate in the modern workplace. And 16-year-olds look at you as if you're a member of the Ku Klux Klan if you use these jokes. So one of the interesting things that I'm interested in using both AI and 5G and the like is, how do we actually create a body of humor that's acceptable in the workplace? And so there's all of these things that run off, what David's talking about, the two Davids and Nikki. Yeah, and I know Jeff's talked about this as well. Linda's in the Mallee thinking about this stuff. There are so many possibilities. So David, when David Soldani, when you're dreaming about what's happening around you in Sydney, when you come from Italy, what's happening to your family. Go back to the question that David asked at the beginning. How does it affect SME? Telstra's now offered me an iPhone 12. Is it 12? Yeah, 12. And so I'm going to go into 5G in 2 weeks. Thinking about a year or two or 2025, what are our lives going to look like transformed by this?
What I think is that in terms of again, we need to look at which sector. If you think of consumers, so
I'm thinking about in the home. I'm going to have one of Nikki's service robots wandering around to bring me my drinks and my snacks as I get older, and clean up the buddy poo, because we've got a household bunny that bounces around. So what's it going to look like? If I'm getting up in the morning, driving the kids to school, going to work, how is my life going to look different?
So the expectations and the target and the vision I'm having, and I published this vision back in 2015 with Manzolini, so from Telecom Italia carrier, and hasn't yet realized. So when you look at the targets of the system, there are a lot of requirements that you will need a 6G system that it is really pervasive and will bring together the the physical world and the digital world. However, what we are expecting is that by 2025, maybe beyond, because the technology adoption, not the technology readiness, the adoption, it takes more time, because of the regulatory framework, for instance, you can't have a car driverless without having in place the right regulatory framework and the right places. It's like to have a Ferrari, you put the Ferrari on the desert, it's not working. So we have a lot of things. So, but the expectation to me are simply two. One, we want to have a full immersive and interactive experience without the utilization of any kind of device. That it is possible by having an holographic rendering in place, that I can have a communication with you and see you as people here in my room, and without wearing a polarized lens. And that's one thing. We want to have a full interactive experience. The other, I think, is that's Nikki discussed already with her, is we are expecting to have most of things as a service. That means I don't need to buy the technology, but I need to make use of the technology. So it means that data has to come as a service, knowledge has to come as a service. We don't have the technology today to sell knowledge as a service. It's coming with the reasoning systems, and the new marketplace will be there. And the third, I think, the machine has to be as a service, because I don't want to have a robotic platform, a big one in my room. Would you sleep with that? I don't think so, but I would like to use it as a service. And in order to have that as a service, there are three key fundamental requirements Nikki has to meet. First, we need to reduce the costs of those robotic platforms. And I do have calculated both the business model and the business case published back in 2017. You find my work in the internet. And I have proved that the business case is extremely sensitive. I'm thinking of the application robotic platform for aging, so healthcare, to have a platform to make me live active, remain active, independent when I'm older, say. It's very sensitive to the price of the robot, and if you don't have a competitive price, the business case gets broken easily. The second thing, you need to have self-powering batteries, because you don't want to run after this platform with the cable. The third one has to be without cable, and therefore you need to have a 5G system, or anyway, a wireless connectivity that allows you to shift all the intelligence currently she develops in the robot into the edge cloud, so that this platform, it is much more clever. It is open, that anyone can exchange this experience. And I'm not paying for it, because this element will be pretty much a piece of hardware, and everything will be done in the cloud. Then you need the 5G to exchange those services with mobility in terms of speed, latency, and reliability. Because if this robotic platform stops, you don't want to have it stopping. So it has to be 100%, or at least 7 nines reliable. Yeah, that's what I think.
Wow. 7 nines reliability, if anyone doesn't know, is an extremely reliable number. The telephone systems you work in are usually 4 and sometimes 3 nines. And that's the back end of them, not the mobiles that drop out every minute or two. David, we're coming close to the end of the, or we are at the end of the hour. I've got one more sticky question that I guess sits with me, and I know sits with a lot of people. I'm pretty sure that COVID is not caused by 5G, but I'm very interested to know your view on the health aspects of 5G and radio type technologies. I know that looking at your slides, you talked about the different spectrums that exist, and I live in a rural area, and that eased me a little. I'll be having less electromagnetic radiation. So 2 aspects to health. If you could answer the first, and I think David in our casual chat broadcast will ask the second. Radiation exposure from 5G and the health risks. Is this something as a society we should be concerned about?
Yeah, this is what the industry, the literature in general, denotes as electromagnetic fields. That's the sector which I am from. So I'm coming from the Maxwell equation. So my degree is on electromagnetic fields. I then developed knowledge of any kind since recent, but I come from exact that field. I was solving Maxwell equation manually for 10 to 20 to 15 years. And I can tell you easily is that to have a look at the latest guidelines coming from the ICNIRP, which stands for the International Commission on of non-ionizing radiation protection guidance, which has been recently publishing, covering exactly the spectrum of radiation of 5G, and looking at the level of exposure. It is proved, demonstrated that are much lower than what we can get today, being exposed by the 4G system. And there are many reasons for that. Just to give some examples so everybody understands. So first, the higher the frequency, I would say the lower the power will be in place, because the device, the receiving device, effective antenna reduces. So it's useful for you to transmit a lot of power when this guy is basically cannot hear you. So the power is reduced. There you have technology that they tend to confine the transmission exactly where it has to be. So if I'm in communication with the 5G using massive MIMO, my next door is not illuminated at all, because that is confined. So therefore you have a lot of energy saving. So what we are thinking of here, it is pretty much the antenna will be smaller. I show you example system. So the higher the frequency, the smaller the antenna. So overall, I think what we are expecting here, it is a lower level of emissions. The level of our body sensitivity will remain the same, because of what make us sick, to be proven. I haven't seen any epidemiological results leading us to a bad direction. It is the resonance which of our part of the body, which relates to the frequency you are radiating. Yes. So if the wave you are radiating is this size, my head resonates. It's a problem, like a microwave. That resonates, so you have a problem. And that's not going to happen with 5G. Smaller antenna, less confined radiation. I think this misconception was, I think, one of the conspiracy that people tend to push, but that's pretty much, I would say, disappeared. Even in Singapore, we have adopted the ICNIRP guidelines, and no more concern. I think it's pretty much like coronavirus. That was also something completely invented and proved to be a fake news. And we can use this forum here to propagate good messages and be optimistic that nothing is going to happen.
David, thanks again for sharing your learned perspective on these things. It's true that we have so much technology around us, and it would appear from the insights you provided that 5G is bringing much greater flexibility, not just in the uses, but in the way it's delivered, the spectrums, the intensity. Really appreciate your insight, a lot to take on in an hour. I'd just like to wrap up by thanking our sponsors that make AWISE possible. I really appreciate all of you attending, because without people to receive what's being shared or expressed, there's no point. So what a wonderful session. Really appreciate it, David. Thanks again, Victor, to our great co-host that shares the optimism and enthusiasm that things will be well in the future, or will be well. Please do join us again in coming weeks for some other great sessions. Now we're just going to wrap the formalities. Those that need to get on with their day, please do. And those that want to stand around in our virtual town hall and have a chat about 5G and pick David's brains, stick around. So, David Broadhurst, I saw you ask one more question, and you're a man on a journey to help heal or keep people on a healthy path mentally. So I just asked the question about physical health and exposure to radiation. Why don't you pose your question to David about mental health?
Yeah, no, thanks, Guy. And like we've said, the technology through these type of platforms have been probably a saving grace for a lot of people this year. But we can't replace the human element. And we never will replace the human element. So my question to David, and maybe anybody else who would like to weigh into this, is from a human and relational factor and perspective, what are the biggest concerns about the higher level of reliance on transactional technology that we need to manage to ensure people's psychological health and wellness and physiological health and wellness through less active jobs because of robotics and things like that. How are we going to manage that it's not a negative for our society based on how we're seeing obesity and mental health becoming bigger and bigger issues that we're trying to manage? So I know it's quite a long question and fairly number of facets to it, but that's always my concern. As great as technology is, we've got to make sure that we understand the human element and we don't lose sight of the human element that could be detrimental in another 20 or 30 years' time.
Can I just share something I read yesterday, which was a good scientific study on the power of voice. You know, what you find now with a lot of companies now, if you're ringing an exec under the age of 30, they're using voicemail as a filter, generally not returning phone calls other than through text or, you know, some messaging app. And what they are missing out on and what the person at the other end are missing out on voice. And what's the stuff was interesting because it said actually video isn't as valuable as voice, that we're actually attuned for developing trust through tone of voice and those things. So for me, the first one, David, would be how can we use 5G? You know, I mean, I now try and listen to things and talk to people when I'm walking rather than sitting. So I think, you know, there's some really practical advice for people around the use of voice rather than text. Now, I think 5G, you know, actually, you know, with it's, you know, and David talking about being able to use apparitions of ourselves. It's magic, but I've interrupted David. The question is more to him. But I think the one thing we have to remember is the use of voice rather than data.
Mm.
I think Chris was going to add something.
I just wasn't sure if I should have my microphone muted or not muted.
Say something.
We're in the town hall
Okay.
phase. Jump in, Chris. This is
Yeah.
the discussion after the presentation.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, I guess this is the first time I've sort of had such an in-depth explanation into the Internet of Things. I know here in Geelong that the Internet of Things is spreading over the city. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in the future. One thing that did pop out to me, which was of key interest, was the AR glasses. So if someone has a bit more information about those or how they're going to work, what the user experience would be like, yeah, that'd
Chris,
be really cool.
for a 61-year-old who has 40,000 names in my address book of people I've received cards and emails from, what I'd love in that is to walk into a cocktail party and look at someone's face and have it flash up with their name. Because I can remember everyone's face, but attaching a name to it is only 2/3 of the time. So for me, that's what I want.
Victor,
You reckon, David?
I was going to say, Victor, that's a very good use case. Chris, just to respond to your comment on AR, last year we had AWISE in person, and we had Larissa, who is a scientist with Defence, talking about AR and VR, and we might see if we can invite her back to talk about how that, you know, will apply in the future, because it in itself is a fantastic and interesting topic. But back to the question on health and well-being, like any tool, like any product, if we don't moderate and manage the way we consume it and consider the way we use it, it can have a massive health burden or risk. So, David Soldani, to that question about mental health, what are your thoughts on that topic?
I think there has been recently on Netflix, a documentary on the effects of the social networks and how certain organizations they are using those channels by influencing the individual and in particular manipulating the persuadable. They're called the persuadable. So there are two videos, two important. One is the hacks. You should watch if you haven't seen it. And the other one is recently was coming. And yeah, so the point is that we may be, especially say younger generations like my son, my daughter, and people that have an initial experience with digital technologies, and also joining a community which include two important threats, I would say. The first are the so-called the scammers. So that there are individuals, they will try to take you into a trap, and the other one is the way of manipulating your thinking and steer your behavior, which in addition may lead you to also a regime of frustration, especially when you are fully immersed into those kind of discussions, and the discussion not going into the direction you would like to steer, and that's quite dangerous. The effects on our brain can be dramatic. So you may be steered to a direction that you will behave in a way that will also cost you a lot of money. Others that your thinking could be completely brainwashed by organization, people that are interacting with you constantly, and then you become dependent, and especially young people, they're always connected, they become dependent, they live by interacting. How to solve this? We need to mitigate those effects, and teach people how to stay in control, identify potential risks, stay in control by teaching them simple controlling mechanisms, and follow up, because it's a sort of drug that you cannot give up because of our ego, right? Our ego, we are pretty much driven by three main things. What we do, it is what we do, and what we have, and the last one is what the people think of us, so our reputation. And that's the last part. I think especially young people, they could be really wounded and harmed by this effect that we as a parents, we have the responsibility of helping them and mitigate those consequences or potential threats.
David, and I wanted your answer on that first, because I've got an answer for everything. Probably I've got that may be my ego. I have been doing a course in the present moment. I would encourage everyone that's watching or listening to this to consider doing that for yourself, to be more mindful and present. What I think is a challenge in modern society is there's so much change. As was said before, there's so much evolution in technology, and people perhaps don't realize 5G is an enabler. It's a communication fabric, and it really is opening up the possibility for communication in a broader and a deeper sense. And I think today we have this social dilemma, we have this challenge. The problem is we have powerful computers in our hands that we're stuck to and glued to. 5G will open up a range of other devices, will empower the Internet of Things, where we can have devices that can perform their functions simply and seamlessly, not have to draw someone to a screen to accidentally get stuck into a half an hour of likes and comments and fake news. So 5G is really going to open up the pervasiveness of technology, the ability for it to do more real-time things and do it in the background. I think that's going to be a key thing that 5G will enable for us, is to have just-in-time information, technology, automation, and not have to have it all channeled through a PC or through a smart device, which is the way we're consuming technology now. So it's really spreading and creating a smoother edge to technologies that we can see a potential, but also have lots of barbs on them at the moment, David Broadhurst, in the mental and the social implications that they have. So I think it's been a fantastic session again. I think in the interest of mental health and wellness, we should all take a break and a step. And I'd encourage anyone again who's listening to sit back and take a moment and reflect on the amazing day that's before you before jumping back into your next text message or into your next email. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate you joining us, and hope you can join us again. Thanks for joining us from Geelong, Chris Hill.
Awesome.
Have a great day. I really enjoyed it.
Pleasure, mate. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Take care now. Ta-da.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.